Good afternoon. This is going to be the Department of Public Works Committee meeting on the winter weather operations. I'm glad to be joined with President Hudson, Councilor Hogan, Councilor Monson, Councilor Schultz, and Councilor Allen, along with DPW Commissioner Robinson and Chief Operating Officer Corey Dunham.
Thank you very much, Councilor. We're okay to take it away?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we are thrilled, Commissioner Robinson and I, to be here to talk about winter weather operations. Just to give a quick overview of what we're going to go over, you know, a lot of the focus will be on snow plowing, so we'll talk about the condition of the fleet, status of CDL drivers, touch on the snowplow map, some new technology that we're pursuing in terms of navigation. We'll touch on the sidewalk snow removal program and the updates for that this year, the winter in Syracuse portion of our website, and then open it up to any questions or concerns. Okay, so the condition of our fleet. As many of you know, the Director of Fleet Operations, Rich DeVesti, joined the city in January 2020, which I feel like he's been here a lot longer, but it's only been that long. And just kind of a look back of where we were. When Rich joined us, over half of the city's fleet of the 10-wheeler snowplows, those are the really big snowplows that we have that do the majority of the work, half of them were over 10 years old. The average age was 8 years. And, you know, that obviously required much more time and commitment from our mechanics, a lot of more vehicles spent down waiting to be repaired. And it wasn't unusual for us to be ending snowstorms with snowplows in the single digits, right, Commissioner? Yep. Where we might start a storm with 20 some odd plows and we end the storm with 7, because just over the course of the storm we've had vehicles break down. And just to do a quick kind of then and now, so when Rich came on, that's the then, where we've got, you know, as you can see, the highlighted vehicles from 2006, 2007, 2005, and where we are now, where the oldest vehicle in terms of those 10-wheelers, again, the ones that do the majority of the plowing, the oldest one we have is a 2014, and we're on schedule to replace that next year. And additionally, we'll be bringing on another 3 10-wheelers to expand the plow. So those won't be replacement vehicles. Those will be in addition to the 10-wheelers that we have now. I also do want to give credit to Finance, who's worked closely with us, particularly Mike Canizaro, on the CHIPS funding that we received from the state to help us purchase these vehicles. You know, a lot of the equipment purchases that we're making are 100% reimbursable. And so appreciation to them. Where we are now, in terms of those 10-wheelers, the average age is about 2 years. There is no 10-wheeler in our fleet that is over 10 years old. As I said, 2014 is the oldest that we have. That'll be replaced next year. And I do also want to take a moment to thank the council, because your support has been absolutely critical to updating our fleet. We wouldn't have been able to do half of what Rich and Commissioner Robinson and his team have accomplished without the support of the council. So we just want to thank you for that. It was when we came in, when Commissioner Robinson came before you and said, I'm having trouble with the fleet, the council replied and said, tell us what you need. And that's exactly what we did. And I think it was that January that we came forward with a request for 10 new snowplows, and that really was a game changer. It's also, and Commissioner Robinson, feel free to jump in, it's also great for morale for the plow drivers to know that we're investing in the vehicles and the equipment that they use every day, that we want them to be safe. We want them to do the best job that they can do. And in order for them to do that, we really need to provide them with equipment that meets the needs and what they need to do to get the job done. So just all around, our fleet is probably the best shape it's been in quite some time. And that's obviously done completely in partnership with the Common Council. And can't thank Rich DeVesti enough for his work. So thank you, Rich.
But then next year, once you replace the 14 and the other 3-wheelers, then we should probably be close to where we need to be, correct?
Correct,
with
yes.
updated vehicles.
Yeah, and Rich is really getting a fleet program in place so that he's working closely with Tim Rudd and in the capital planning so that we're laying out a roadmap of when these vehicles should be replaced so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again, so that if Rich were to walk out the door tomorrow, please don't.
Corey, I just want to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think that we're going to find ourselves in this position.
I hope not.
I think you guys have actually taking the lead in moving this forward, because for as long as I've been here, nobody ever really wanted to address it. They just band-aided what we had and kept us moving. So as long as we can stay current with newer fleet, I really don't think, outside of the drivers, that we should be in this position again.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And again, Rich is making sure that we have a fleet plan that's sustainable so that it's not solely dependent on Rich, although he's been able to bring us contacts and experience and resources like nobody else. But Rich is really making sure that that plan is sustainable so that it outlives, you know,
Are we
me
gonna
and-
get the free 10 vehicles again, ever?
Well, I mean, I think we've really, with the use of the CHIPS program, we've really been able to find a way that all of those costs are reimbursable. And so, you know, and especially also with the state providing the touring routes funding, we're able to allocate more to street paving, allocate that money to street paving, and dedicate more CHIPS to vehicle purchases. So it was always available to us, but traditionally that $4 million in CHIPS funding was put towards paving. And with the state coming in with the touring routes money, we can put that towards paving and also use a significant portion of the CHIPS funding for vehicles as well. I mean, CHIPS is still used for paving, but for us to be working closely with the state to make sure that CHIPS is being used in the places where it's needed the most. And for us, that was vehicles.
So those were the 10 vehicles we got. from
Yeah,
the
those
CHIPS.
were all paid for by CHIPS. Yep.
So does adding vehicles to the fleet mean that we're adding staff to keep up with those, or is this, they're in the rotation? In case they break, we have trucks that are ready to go.
Yeah, if we can ever get to a point where they're knocking down the door again.
Yeah.
Right now, it's a,
How many are you down, Jeremy?
Yeah, we will. So we'll get to CDL drivers. No, but yes, I mean, if we've got the trucks, then we want the drivers. And so, you know, I think Jeremy would be happy to have, you know, more drivers than we need. But if we've got trucks, then we want drivers in those trucks.
So are these drivers full-time year-round, or? are they
Yes, yeah, and
seasonal?
yeah.
So when we add more staff, then they can do other things for the
Correct.
city throughout the year?
Yeah, so in the warmer months, they go to sewers, they go to street repair, you know, those bureaus that are a little bit,
so it's not adding more staff, it's just
Replenish.
we're bringing in staff that we don't have. We have openings now that we just can't. We're just filling positions. Once we get to a point where all positions are filled, I think we'll be fine.
But we added more trucks, so we need more drivers then, just in
So-
essence,
Not
right?
necessarily, not
it won't
necessarily.
be, so it wouldn't be above the positions that we have in the budget right now. So it wouldn't be, so I mean, we have vacancies right now, so we would fill those vacancies and put those people into trucks.
And we're replacing the trucks, so it's not like we're buying all these new trucks, keeping the 10 we have, we're getting rid of them.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the turnover is, you know, less, we shouldn't be keeping anything more than 10 years. I mean, we'd like to turn them over as quickly as we can.
I'm gonna be quiet real quick here. How many people are you down? 7?
CDL.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
7 drivers.
Yep.
But you said these are in addition to the fleet, though, so we are adding trucks, not just replacing them. We're adding.
Well, if you look at the list, it's like
Right.
3 extra trucks.
Okay.
So just to get really quick on CDL drivers, they're high demand positions. They almost always have been high demand positions. And we're in the same situation as the county, New York State. You know, I know we've all seen the advertisements there about, you know, come plow for New York State. So there's nothing unique about the city of Syracuse in this situation. Right.
Right, I'm
So I
getting
mean,
it.
like, you know, private industry, you know, they're recruiting them also. They're just in high demand right now. And so that's, again, there's nothing unique about the city in this situation. We have a number of vacancies. We've got applications. We're doing interviews. So, you know, I mean, there are always positions to fill heading into winter. I think we probably would have liked to have been a little bit more ahead of the curve than we are now, but that's not due to any issues with us. Everybody's in the same boat.
You have any girl drivers?
We do.
Oh, you plow drivers?
Women.
How
Yeah.
many?
Of course they are.
Yeah, of course, they're women.
I'm not just saying that either. They're great. They're awesome.
So we do have some applications to maybe currently fill those 7 vacancies.
Yeah, we got some bids out there waiting for people to come in, but it's just, we're not in the same boat as we were 5 to 10 years ago where people were knocking down the door.
Correct.
How big is the salary gap between like a private industry, an Amazon CDL driver?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I can't get the exact numbers, but I can guesstimate it's,
yeah, I don't know. Rich, do you happen to know?
I think about $8 probably,
Yeah.
$8.
But I mean,
Yeah.
there's also, this ties into our efforts also to make sure that people know the other benefits of working for the city. So the retirement, the pension, the very affordable health care, when you compare it to a lot of private industries, we have a very rich healthcare plan.
Which I might add, no one that is in the age of 21 and 30 cares about.
Care.
Right.
Yeah.
They better care.
So we need to do a better job.
They better care.
So I got a couple of questions. Commissioner. So part of it is what Councilor Monto has just touched. Because I think we had this conversation either earlier during the year about you guys maybe losing your folks to state. They see that the state pay a little bit more, so they want to go over there. Have we mitigate that a little bit?
I mean, we also have people
stay?
come back who leave for the state and then come
Okay, I
back
got
also.
the-
just saying.
Okay.
Probably had about 4 to 5 people come back from the state.
Okay, so it wasn't that great up there.
Oh, no.
Okay.
You know.
But
Lost
in
their seniority, that was the reason why.
Yeah.
You go to the state, they lose their seniority, now
But do
they're
they
on,
get it when they come back?
it's negotiation.
Yeah, we negotiated a clause in the contract that they have a grace period where they can change their mind and come back without losing their seniority, but if they're gone for an extended period of time, then they would.
Okay, but in terms of pay, we have seen that it's not that difference. What was it, $8 an hour difference?
That's
Right.
that's private industry.
Private.
Private, okay. What's that with the state?
Yeah, do you know what the,
It's 25, so it's about 5 to $6 difference.
Okay. With our perks, if we sell them well, that we could,
Like I said,
A little
the
bit.
age of 21 to 30, the
Yeah.
drivers that we normally try to get knocking on the door, they only care about money.
yeah, right.
Benefits don't really.
Which is
entice
too bad we can't say, pick one or the other. If you don't want benefits, then we'll give you an extra 5, because I'm
Right.
sure you would save,
Yeah.
not that they're using.
you can
the
opt out of our
healthcare, but you know
healthcare
what I mean.
plan, right,
Especially if you
right,
get
right.
sick, you know what I mean?
Right. So, I mean, again, like, there's nothing unique necessarily about us. Everybody is, it's just in high demand. We face the same situation with a lot of positions, but, we have applications in, we're conducting interviews, so, we'll be ready in terms of
And I know
drivers.
we're all over the place, and I know you're doing your presentation, but let me ask you this a question, because I met with Central. They have the same issue. But Central is paying them to train. They're training them for the CDL, and they're paying them. Do we pay?
So, I mean, we will train people for CDLs. If we have employees who are interested in getting their CDL, we'll provide,
But you're saying employees, if Joe walked in Central and
Yeah.
told him he wanted to do CDL, they're gonna train him and pay him.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly explore something like Parks is doing with lifeguards, where we'll pay for it, but you need to stay here. I
And
mean,
they
we're-
got, right.
Yeah, we're not going to pay you for it and then have you,
Right.
go work for Central.
So assume I come in with aspiration that I want to do CDL.
Yeah.
And I just don't have the skill, but
Sure.
I'm interested. Could we employ them while we train them and have some kind of agreement that once we give you this training, you gotta stay here for such amount
Yeah.
of time
Yeah.
before you leave, or otherwise we'll require that money back.
Yeah.
Right? In a sense like that.
Yeah, I think we're open to any ideas, and really with the changes that HR is making in work safety, we have more people dedicated to that who are able to provide that training to CDL, folks that want to get their CDL that wasn't a resource that we had before. So I think it's a great idea to try and attract people that will provide you with the CDL, and then we want you to work for us. So yeah, I'm open to that.
Well, I got 2 more questions, and then I'll be done, right? The other part is going back to what we touched earlier about coming in here and realizing that the fleet wasn't where it's supposed to be. Now, it costs us money when we have to catch up like that. Now, have we written a plan, because I expect you're probably not gonna be here for another 50, 60 years to work for the city, But somebody will always have to do it, right?
I don't know. I
50
mean,
and now.
Hey, Hogan is different.
he's an animal all on his own. Yeah. I don't know. Councilor Hogan's my role model in a lot of ways. I don't know if working for the city for 50 years is it. No, absolutely. I mean, that's really what Rich has been working on, because we want to make sure we don't get in this position again, that we give whoever comes next
That's right.
the tools to make sure that
Yes.
we're, the guidelines of you shouldn't let your snowplows get more than 10 years old, and this is how often you should be buying them. And Rich does a lot more than just snowplows. I mean, that's obviously what we're here to talk about today is our snow fleet, but whether it's sewers, whether it's sanitation, transportation, whether it's parks and water. You know, we're having more conversations with SPD. I mean, Rich has a lot of experience that he can lend to the city so that we can get these plans in place so we don't find ourselves in this position again.
Counselor, I can attest, this has never been done before.
Haven't.
You know, I mean, we know this has never been done. This planning like this, the request for new vehicles, for years administrations dumped money into old vehicles because they were scared of the capital costs.
Yeah.
We went through it. This is really, and have somebody like Rich too, and a commissioner that's forward thinking. I mean, this is really, really a
I agree
different
with
thing
you.
here.
Yeah, that's great. And I want a little bit, maybe for those that are data driven, maybe Otto could look at that maybe a year from now to see this planning that is in place. What is it in terms of being proactive? What's the cost saving in that avenue, you know, and generate that and couple it with what Rich is doing and say, you know what, this is being proactive. This is what cost saving it has done to the city, you know, and put that document together, and whoever coming next, they can see not only are we trying to push for what's right, but in terms of monetary saving, there's a lot to it.
And to add to that too, efficiency, you know, how much more efficient was it to plow all the streets and the timing?
Right.
Well,
And-
yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, Council, because again, we couldn't have done it without your support.
No, it's great. And my last question.
That's it.
That's it.
Is this during this particular phase, or is this your last question?
Oh, he
will
wasn't here
see.
for the study session, so he gotta get it.
Right, I gotta get it in, right? So my last question is, you know, with all the trucks and with weather and with snow coming, do we know how many trucks are in each quadrant of the city?
So, I mean, you want me to, I mean, not necessarily. We have and we'll get into the routes and what we're doing to try and address our snowplow routes to make sure that the routes are equitable. But I mean, it's really kind of, you know, responding also to, you know, we have the emergency routes, you know, that's the primary. So those are going to be your hills and your hospitals. And I don't know if those, not having looked
There's a lot
at
of
it.
that in my district.
Right. And I don't know if those are evenly distributed across the different quadrants, but I mean, you know, there are hillier areas of the city, and those are our priorities. There are, you know, where the emergency routes, where the hospitals are, where the ambulances need to go. And so that's the priority. And then we move on to the highly trafficked areas, and then we move on to the residential streets. So there wouldn't necessarily be the same number of plows evenly distributed throughout the city, because it's driven by the topography and traffic. And that's not necessarily evenly distributed throughout the city.
So we can move into the snow map.
Okay, all right.
To talk about
So the snowplow map, this thing is falling asleep. Can somebody help me? Okay. Thank you,
Do
Congressman.
we ever tow cars? Like if
Oh, we
you have
do.
a street
Oh, we do.
that they're blocking and they're not moving, do you tow them out
Oh,
the
yes,
way?
yes. Deputy Chief Schaaf is not here just at. 'cause
Yes,
he's
he is.
inter-
There,
No,
he's
no,
right.
I'm saying he's not here just because he's interested in listening to me present. He's also here because SPD plays a huge role in our snowplow operations.
Okay, cool.
So just real quick, our public snowplow map. So, you know, I think many of you are already familiar with this. It provides insight into the last time that a street was plowed. One of the things it also provides is the location of reported illegally parked cars. So if you are somebody who's wondering, why hasn't my street been plowed? One of the places you can go is the snowplow map to see if perhaps an illegally parked car has been reported there. And this is, you know, has been information helpful to us, especially after the storm. I would do interviews or constituents who say, you know, I live on X Boulevard and my street wasn't plowed. And I can say, well, if you go back, you know, we had a report of 2 illegally parked cars, so the plow couldn't get by, and that's why your service was delayed. So to be able to see this on the snowplow map, I think provides residents some transparency. You can search your address if you're like me and maps, you can't find your street on a map. I just can't. And it was viewed 36,000 times last season, so it's definitely something that is, you know, used by a number of residents.
And the constituents, report illegally parked cars?
Sure.
So how do you do it? Because I didn't even know that we could do that.
So we would encourage residents to call 911 if they want to report an illegally parked car. I mean, because that's just the fastest way to get it to SPD so they can prioritize. So that's the best way to do it. And then that information is what's fed into this map.
But to that point, your drivers are already coding that there's an illegally parked car,
Correct.
which is why we can't plow the street. So
Correct.
what's the communication that happens with the plow driver and 911? Do they call?
So go ahead, and you know better than I do.
So when a driver can't get down the street, they call dispatch. Dispatch calls SPD. SPD is then deployed out to the street. We can't stay on the street, so we still got to continue to go on. So we leave, and once dispatch calls back and say all clear, meaning like they're told, we'll come back eventually. I'm not saying promptly, but we'll come back eventually.
So, okay, so Chief, what happens then? I mean, you have to ticket the car, correct? I mean, or when is it, or is it an emergency situation where you can tow it immediately?
So if the street's impassable and needs to be cleared for snowing, we can tow for any ticket. We generally just don't do that. However, in certain circumstances, we will choose to make the tow. One is if the street's impassable or you can't get through for snowplow purposes, fire engines can't get through for another example, or ambulances. But you also have to weigh that with, how big is your staff doing the towing, how many tows are there? If you got 50 cars that are blocking, you're gonna have to be judicious when you put, if you only got 4 people working, because the tow could take up to, half hour, 45 minutes for a truck to come. So, but that's the game plan. If the streets are impassable, to tow them out of there.
Is there a situation where the police just can't respond, obviously, sometimes because you can't respond because you're doing other stuff?
There could be, in regards to that, we have budgeted for and try to manage as best we can a special detail that won't be tied to the radio for other things during major snow events. So Sergeant Romaine stays in pretty good contact with Commissioner Robinson and his staff, and they kind of say, hey, we got a big one coming, and then Carlos will send out the word to, hey, who wants to work this weekend? So we'll be dedicated to that.
I remember there was one proposal a few years back that a foreman in DPW would give him the powers to ticket.
I was just gonna say that, we had gave DPW the power to do tickets before you was off the council. I was just.
I remember that. I don't know what happened with that.
That was with the private plow operators?
That was,
Oh, okay.
that was because a lot of times the police, understaffed as they are, because you're under an emergency situation too. Obviously, the snow, you're trying to get people out of driveways and traffic and all that. So depending on the police to actually being able to take care of these cars that are parked on both sides of Bryan Avenue, say.
There was an ordinance passed in the city, it was the commissioner and deputy commissioner.
Get up there, Rod.
Yeah, well, I was.
Don't go anywhere, Chief.
There's an ordinance that we passed that gave authority to the commissioners and deputy commissioner, and I can't remember what's the next level of
The
staffing.
supervisor.
The supervisor or
Superintendent?
superintendent.
Yeah.
So there were, it's all there, so they would have the authority to do that. And while I'm here, the other thing is, on this one, it says the last time that was plowed, but does that mean that the vehicle was on the street? Does that mean that the plow was down? Because sometimes those reports are just symbolic of the plow being on the street, not necessarily that the plows were down.
Good question. Did you get that? The question was, do the lines indicate when a plow has gone down the street and actually plowed, or that the plow just drove down the street and didn't drop their blade?
Well, I don't know that there's a situation where a street would need to be plowed and a plow would just go by and not drop the
But if
blade.
they have to tip their blade up or something to get through illegally parked cars, they
I mean,
went down
it's,
the street, but they didn't
yeah, I mean,
plow
it doesn't have a sensor to know when the plow is engaged. It's when the plow is going down the street.
I
Yeah.
imagine that's happening up in your area. That's why you ask.
And maybe I'm confused, but when I was on the council and this was introduced, there was the sensor that allowed to tell when the plow was actually down. Correct?
That's not the technology we're using now, no.
So that's been
That means it's
changed?
plowed.
Yeah, so that would have changed.
So it happens, right, Commissioner?
It has changed.
Right. But I mean, has that happened in the past?
We didn't.
That a plow would go down a street that needs to be plowed and doesn't plow it.
Theoretically, yes, it could happen.
Thank you.
Seems like a kind of rare occasion, so.
But
Okay.
to the chiefs, I mean, Chief, what do you feel about that? I mean, are you guys sometimes during those emergencies, I mean, it'd be nice if, DPW, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it either, Commissioner.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
Ticketing
I mean,
illegal
the
cars.
administration's been very clear that snow removal is a high priority for the mayor and his team. So we, like I said, we budget for it. We try to take people that aren't on duty. Otherwise, we were using civilian staff to tow. We've trained them to ticket and tow, our CSOs. So it's not just police officers.
So they be on, CSOs would be on during an emergency? Would you have them on?
We try to hire, yes.
Okay, that would be,
Yeah.
because it's such a real issue.
No, it is. Yeah.
It's really dangerous.
Yeah, I think we'd like to leave the ticketing and towing to the Syracuse Police Department and using CSOs if officers aren't available, rather than getting DPW in the business of ticketing and.
Can you outsource the towing? I know police tow is limited, so are you able to have 5 companies on call?
I mean, the towing's done by private companies anyways.
Oh,
We just
okay.
call for them.
Okay.
We don't do the towing
So
ourselves.
it's not our staff that are
We
doing
we
it?
have, there's 15 companies that are on licensed by the city to tow for the police department.
Okay. And one last shout out to Sergeant Romaine and his team. He's already doing his proactive education and putting slips under car wipers. What? Are you reiterating what I'm
So-
saying?
No, I said Sergeant Romaine is like,
And that's-
he's a go-to
Bomb,
guy.
like
He's a
Turbo
Romaine
cop.
for president, like amazing. But he's already putting the slips out to tell people, if you park on the wrong side during the snow, you will be towed. So, amen for that work.
Yep, so you just wanted into my last point that I was gonna make, is that we take it so seriously that I have him go out, and it's kind of become routine now, that we've what we've identified as our top 20 or 30 streets.
Hotspot areas.
And we go out ahead of time, and then we do it downtown as well, and say, hey, listen, it's winter time, you really shouldn't have to do this, but we do it.
Yes.
Because prevention is better than going out and trying to tow
And he
the
did it
cars.
on cars that were legally parked. So I texted him, I'm like, why are you putting this on the cars? He goes, because they won't be legal tomorrow. And I'm trying to get the point across to them today. I'm like, oh, he's so great.
So with the mapping and everything, what's the turn-by-turn navigation?
So
How does
the
that work?
turn-by-turn navigation, and I don't know why this keeps, sorry. So turn-by-turn navigation, so this is a partnership between DPW and API, and this is really to assist drivers, both existing drivers and those who might be new to snow plowing, navigating the routes to ensure we've got full coverage and efficiency. So traditionally, a plow driver has known what their route is by the sheet of paper that they're handed. And so what we have instead are units where the routes have been mapped. The units sit in the cab of the plow and directs the driver as to where to go in order to make sure that they're covering the route. So it would also be dynamic. And so if, they look down a street, they're not going to be able to go down that street because there's too many illegally parked cars. They go to the next street. The system will respond to that and make sure that we note that street was skipped, but also to make sure that it responds so that you're covering the rest of the route. And so this is just really, and the training was held last week down at DPW with the plow drivers, and, some of the plow drivers did admit that one of the most difficult elements of the job is learning the routes, especially if you're plowing in a neighborhood you're not familiar with. And so this provides the drivers with turn-by-turn navigation so that they don't need to follow the sheet of paper or have institutional knowledge. This is telling them where to go.
So this program knows there's illegally parked cars before they get there?
No, it would be that I'm looking down the street, I know I can't go down that street, so I'm going to go to the next one. So it would work in the same way that,
Oh, like an Uber
like Google
driver.
Maps.
So you take a left
yeah.
and they reroute you?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, like I missed my exit, so then it's going to send me to the next exit and tell me how to get to
Got
where
it.
I still need to go. So that way, it's not all based on institutional knowledge or, looking at the sheet of paper that you have. It's pretty cool technology, and I think it's going to be really helpful for the drivers. And from the training that happened last week, it sounded like they're pretty enthusiastic about it.
So, but who transfers that institutional knowledge? I mean, like, for instance, that second go-around, I know the commissioner he gets calls from me on this one. The second go-around, some of those narrow streets, that second go-around, you really got to cut back that curve. In order for people to be able to park on the other side. Otherwise, you can't get up the street at all. Because you got, during that changeover time, you got cars parked on both sides,
That's our crew leaders.
but that's part of the institutional knowledge
Yeah.
that you're going to have to relate to some of the drivers in certain neighborhoods.
So our crew leaders work with our drivers a lot to, driving a plow is tough. Especially your first time driving, you can't fathom being in this big vehicle trying to control it. So trying to get closest to the curb as possible without damaging
Yeah.
things. So that's just some things that the crew leader is just constantly instilling in the drivers. And as far as the Rubicon, turn by turn, I think it's a great tool because let's say you're the driver on first shift and you had an emergency, right? Right then and there, I can get in your truck and know exactly where you left off. Usually it's like, oh, hearsay. Okay, you left off on Butternut or Burnett or whatever. They're not going to know exactly what block, but this turn by turn will tell
If
you.
that electronic gizmos go down, what do? If they have a backup paper
We got Connor.
board,
He's awesome.
he goes out and
He's
goes out and fixes it.
he's the guy. No, but yeah,
Things happen in storms sometimes.
No, I know things happen, and we just have to adjust with if that happens.
They can also go back to your favorite, just paper.
Right. We would prefer not to. Yeah.
I'll just-
You want to,
So just touching really quickly on what Deputy Chief Schaaf was talking about. So we've increased our efforts, enforcement efforts in terms of parking. So this is definitely, I think, the number one request from plow drivers is that people get their cars off the street. Obviously, not everybody's in a position to do that, and so we ask people to abide by odd, even parking or just use common sense and not park directly across the street from another car. And so what we did before, which some of you might be aware of, is that we had identified other streets. We looked at the width of the street. We looked at the density of the street, how many multiple family units are on there, which probably means more than one vehicle, which ones didn't have driveways, and also institutional knowledge to come up with that 20 to 30 streets that Deputy Chief Schaaf mentioned that SPD would use to proactively identify areas that we need to try and sweep before, either before or during a snow event. But what we've done this year is that we've used the historical data that we've collected last winter and such about where we actually found illegally parked cars to see, does that match up with what the streets that we had before that was just kind of based on, again, characteristics of the street and institutional knowledge. And so this map here shows where the illegally parked cars were found and lines up with where the previous routes were, and identifies that there are definitely some areas where we're finding illegally parked cars that were not previously on our list. And so now we've expanded the list to about 70 streets. And they're generally in clusters, and I will send this as a follow-up to the council afterwards so you can see the map more closely. But there's generally 2 or 3 clusters within each quadrant. You can probably guess what those would be. I do have here, for anybody interested, the list of the actual streets broken down by quadrant, but we're trying to make sure that data is informing also our enforcement efforts as well. Supplemental sidewalk snow removal. So I do also have copies of the updated map and the list of streets for anybody who is looking for it. Just as a reminder, the pilot, we started in the winter of 2018 into 2019. That year we started with 20 miles of streets, so it was about 40 miles of sidewalk, and this year we're up to about 125 miles of sidewalks being cleared. This year's program, we're proud to say, reaches every single Syracuse City school in the district. Now, that doesn't mean that we've cleared every single different route you could take to get to the school, but there's at least a clear path leading up to each one of the schools. JSK, who we've worked with before, was awarded the bid, but and I do this every time we talk about this program, a reminder that this program is supplemental and that the responsibility for clearing snow and ice remains with the property owner. And again, this map reflects the network of sidewalks that we'll be clearing, but there are obviously many other miles of sidewalk in the city that are not on this program. It still is on the property owner to make sure it's clear, to put down salt if it's icy. That responsibility remains with the property owner.
Can there be a map that denotes when those sidewalk clearers are out, like
So-
there's trucks?
Leading to my final slide of Winter
Well,
in Syracuse website. No, that's okay. It's almost as if I asked you to do that.
Okay.
So on the new website, we have Winter in Syracuse, which has, everything you need to know about winter in Syracuse. It has the snowplow tracking map. It has the sidewalk clearance map, and also you can track the sidewalks as they are cleared. It has the priority parking enforcement map. It has some of the more fun elements of winter, some recreational opportunities not having to do with ticketing and towing and plowing and sidewalk clearance. And so this information is available on the city website, and so welcome everybody to take a look. And that's it for winter operations.
Any other questions?
One more comment, it's not really a question because I already talked to Neil Burke about this, but ideally, it would be nice if the sidewalk clearing program could include salt, but I know for liability reasons it can't, but I think salt would go so far in trying to keep the sidewalks clear, especially around the schools, because some of them are ice shelves even
Yeah.
after, depending on how cold it is, you all know that, so.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, and we try to look to improve, whether it's, both plowing and sidewalk clearance each year to try and find something new and different to do. And so I'm definitely not ruling out that if we could find some way to incorporate salt. I agree. I think that would be a great way to kind of further ensure safety. So yeah, definitely on the table.
Corey, does this include routes around city parks or not?
This one doesn't. This one doesn't include what parks clears, does it, Neil?
No.
Okay. And
Why, Neil?
well, we that map exists. We could certainly provide it, but we wanted to. This one was just about what the city and in partnership with SU clears. So that's what the orange line is. What SU clears. But we wanted to just keep it to what we clear as part of the program. But that map also does exist. Of if you want to look at, if you want to look at the downtown committee and then include parks and all the walks that are cleared, that map exists also. But Councilor Allen had a question about salt and why we wouldn't pursue salt as part of why we haven't done it yet.
In year one, we had no idea what we were doing, right? And so we went out and we tried it, and we spoke with a lot of different contractors. And one of the main limiting factors for this was getting insurance. It is a one-off or a very special thing for an underwriter to look at to say you're clearing public sidewalks. Salt came into the discussion very early on with the insurance companies who said, do not approach salt. That was then. We're willing to continue to try and have the conversations, but the insurance piece of it is a very tricky part, and we do assist the contractors with obtaining that insurance each year.
But there might be better, go ahead.
No, it just seems like the salt would make it safer, so that's why I asked what was
But
the
it's
difference.
corrosive, right? So it could damage, but there's new chemicals out there.
It's a give and a take. It's also a significant expense. And if you take a look at the equipment, it's not the size of a truck. They're really small tractors, so they can only carry so much. Again, it's a give and a take. And when we first started, they said, skip the salt question. But if we want to look at that, or if we want to have discussions with SCSD about maybe there's some slight expansions that we can incorporate there around their properties and out to the main street, because a lot of them are set back. We're willing to have those discussions, and we have approached that in the past.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief Operating Officer. Thank you, DPW team. Reg, thank you for deploying this program for the fleet, for the maintenance. My fellow counselors, this is going to conclude this.
Date times Thursday night, 6 p.m. That's when it's supposed to hit.
Thank you.
We'll see how the commissioner.
I'll be out there, all right? In my snowsuit.